Guys, hope you are doing well today. Um, just wanted to try and spread some positivity to hang in there. We just got the announcement yesterday that we're going to continue e-learning for the rest of the school year. So we're just going to try and make the best of it. If there's anything we can do better, if there's anything that you need help with, reach out to us and let us know, okay? So we are going to continue talking about biotic interactions, and specifically we will talk about our last three interactions. So parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. So I like this picture a lot. So some of you might be familiar with these terms, some of you may not be familiar. If you're familiar, you can definitely just keep watching because there's some really cool examples that I'll give of each one. If you're not familiar, typically these interactions are represented with like a plus, minus, or zero. And I'll kind of explain what those mean. So we have mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. So the first one, parasitism, you can see this red creature who's not very happy, and this one other creature who looks like he's taking a bite and is just, just very pleased. So one species is benefiting and the other species is harmed. So species A is benefiting, probably feeding off of some blood from species B who's being harmed. And so that's where we have the plus and minus. Plus benefits, minus harms. So, this is much more effective when it's full screen. So, parasitism involves one species feeding and also possibly finding shelter in a host. This example is a tapeworm inside of a human intestine. So that's lovely. The tapeworm, you may not know. I mean, if you have a lot of tapeworms, then you'll feel discomfort for sure. But, a lot of like pets, if you found like a stray dog, they'll have some worms. It's not going to kill them. It's just going to probably make them a little nutrient deficient, probably, because this worm is definitely stealing some of the nutrients away. All right, so let's click away out of this intestine and then go on to the horsehair worm. So again, parasitism involves one species feeding, but also just finding a host. So this horsehair worm, it looks like a rubber band. The squiggly spaghetti right here was very small at one point, and then was ingested by this cricket, and then it grew bigger. And actually, what it does over time is it starts to control the cricket's brain. So the goal of this just adorable worm is to get to water. So what it does, it's found a way somehow to control the cricket's brain so that the cricket will jump into water and drown itself. But the horsehair worm does not care. It basically just escapes, is like, see you later, and then will continue its life cycle. So definitely parasitism, right? Horsehair worm benefits, cricket, not so much. So, so this guy, another cutie, this is a tongue-eating isopod. And what they do is something just real special. They will latch on to a fish's tongue and just kind of nestle in, make a nice little home. And they will probably feed off of the blood from the tongue. And also just it's shelter. It gets to hitch a ride and absorb any nutrients that the fish exposes it to. Now it's not going to kill the fish. And actually over time, I've read that a lot of the fish, I mean, they'll continue to eat other things. They basically just use the isopod like it's its tongue, and then they'll just continue to eat food. So, okay, let's keep moving on. Now on to these birds. So, is something looking a little off to you right here? Yes, the answer should be yes. So what a cowbird does is the female will actually lay its egg or eggs into the nest of another bird. And then she'll say, okay, that was my job. See you later. So the other bird will care for the eggs, and then when they hatch, she will care, well, if there's a male and a female, these birds will both care for the cowbird chicks. Now, the cowbirds typically they're a lot bigger than a lot of these birds that they're hatching into these nests. For example, this picture here. This is a crazy difference, right? So you can imagine that when this bird was even younger as a chick in a nest, it was very easy for this bird to kind of kick out its adoptive siblings, if you will, and take all the resources for itself. So that is another type of parasitism. It's almost like exploitive predation too, because it's preventing those chicks from getting resources. So you might see some overlap with some of these, but that's okay. It's okay to question that. I was questioning a lot of things too, like what is parasitism. So if you get confused, don't worry, you're not alone. But there's just a ton of different examples, and also what we know is only what we studied so far. We still are learning so many new things about wildlife and ecology. So keep that in mind too. Okay, so we are going to talk about now mutualism, which is a lot happier because both species will benefit from each other. So that's why we have two pluses and everyone's happy and green. So our first example is one that you maybe are familiar with because you watched the video of the sloth. So the sloth is very slow moving, and its fur is it's so different, and it has lots of different. It's probably has a lot of surface area, um, and it's wet a lot of times, so it'll actually be a great environment for algae to grow. And in return, that sloth can maybe grab a nice little snack. It has all these other microbes that are also on its fur. But we're just going to just zoom in on the algae because you can actually see the green for this picture. So both are benefiting from each other. One has some habitat, one has a nice little snack for itself. Also, um, the green provides camouflage for the sloth, which is a really nice benefit because we know it's so slow moving that if it does get seen by a predator, its chances for survival have now dropped quite a bit. So both are positive for this one. Our next one is between a rhino and a funny bird called an oxpecker. So this bird, I love this picture. Look how cute. This bird will eat ticks and other insects that could be actually really harmful to the rhino. The rhino is such a big animal, but a lot of these insects could carry diseases. So these birds will actually groom this rhino and pick off all the insects. And in turn, it gets a nice meal for itself, and the rhino is protected from any disease that the insects might bring. Look at right in the ear, too. And then we also have pollination. So mutualism occurs in this format because bees are getting a nice tasty snack of like any kind of nectar from the plant, and especially from the flower. And when they are all up in the flower's business, you can see all this pollen that's around the bee. Well, this bee will buzz right on over to another plant, and then it will cross-pollinate with another plant. And that's how plants would reproduce, right? So it's spreading a lot of genes and increasing the genetic variety. What day is it? So it really is a nice mutualistic relationship between bees and flowers. And bees are kind of cute when they're up close, from far away and you hear that noise and you're like, oh my gosh, get that the heck away from me. But up close, they just really want flowers. That's all. Another one that we did learn a little bit about last unit was good bacteria. And I'm not going to go into all these different specific bacteria, but just know that there are quite a few bacteria that are good for you that are in or on your body. And this is Tiara Gwynn Fletcher. So she is like in her 20s. She's actually, she works for NASA. So she's amazingly talented and smart. And she's got good bacterial flora. So both her and bacteria are doing great and they're benefiting from each other. So plus and plus mutualism. Okay, now let's move on to commensalism. Um, Parasitism, we're pretty familiar with, or at least maybe sometimes you are familiar with it because parasite, it seems to be more common in our language. Mutualist or mutualism, the word mutual, meaning, both of you benefiting is pretty common, but commensalism isn't as common. One species benefits, the other's unaffected. So in this picture, you can see he's just gray, not red, not green. He's not harmed, but he doesn't benefit. It's whatever. Doesn't really care about this little guy finding shelter. This one is harder to find in nature because, we can usually find a benefit or something that harms species B. Or we just say, well, maybe it's harmful, we just don't know yet. And it could be very species specific. One that's known is a lot of times between birds and larger mammals. So in this case, cattle egrets or egrets and buffalo. So the buffalo are grazing, they're eating grass, taking a swim, and they are in effect disturbing the ground, and insects will fly away or come up from the ground from the disturbance. And so the egrets are just waiting for this to happen, and then they're gonna just have a big old feast on all of these critters. So they've learned, either it's innate in them, it's an instinct, or they've learned this to follow buffalo around because they know they'll get insects from following them. So the buffalo aren't really affected. I mean, so far as we know, and the egrets are getting food. So plus for egrets, 0 for buffalo. Another one is barnacles on whales. So this is a big whale fin. Now barnacles, there's like these, they almost look like worms or slugs that hide in this nice little barnacle shell. And basically what they do is they just kind of hang out on the whale and are just hitchhiking a ride. They also get to travel to different sources for food, as the whale is traveling for food as well. So the one thing, and you could see there's all sorts of critters that are hitchhiking a ride on this whale. Now, the one thing is this whale is so big and so powerful in the water that it's likely not inhibited by all of these or slowed down by these barnacles. But there could be instances where there's like maybe a sea turtle that has a ton of barnacles that is very slowed down by the barnacles. So it could be um, a different relationship. Barnacles could actually be more parasitic because even though they're just hitchhiking, they're just hanging on for a ride, they could be harming the turtle or any other smaller creature because they're slowing the creature down. So it really depends on the species. Another interesting one is between a golden jackal and a tiger. So this golden jackal is a scavenger, which means that it also hunts, but most likely it's getting its food from just finding an opportunity that was already hunted. So for example, this tiger probably tackled down this large ungulate here, like a wildebeest or something. This jackal, looking at the size of this rib cage, it's not likely that one golden jackal could probably take this down. So this was likely a tiger kill. The tiger ate what it could, and then left the rest. And so now this golden jackal is scavenging and eating. So this golden jackal, what they've studied, because obviously tigers are really well studied because they're so endangered, is that golden jackals, especially just lone, like a golden jackal who hasn't found a pack yet, will follow tigers because they know that they're going to find a carcass eventually. And the tiger is no worse for the wear. I'm sure they probably get a little annoyed, but like I think this tiger is probably like, okay, can you stop? And maybe he got too close. I don't know. But for the most part, it's not like the tiger attacks, or at least there hasn't been reported attacks. So that one's kind of interesting. So there are a bunch of examples. I included a lot of videos to kind of help you understand the differences between these relationships. Um, Commensalism is a really tough one to find. So I challenge you, if you have one in mind and you want to share it, just in the discussion. I think it's like the question on the first page of this class. It says you have questions. There's a discussion board, and you could post a link, and I can check it out to see if if it's commensalism. That would be helpful for me. But that is all for biotic interactions. We talked about predation, competition. Now we just talked about parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. I just threw out a lot at you, considering that it's e-learning and it's different. So we are going to take Monday as a work day again, just so you can get caught up, and just be sure that you're doing the assessments. I know some of them are just like, oh, it's 5 points or whatever, and maybe I don't have to watch a screencast and I can just do it. But I really just want to enhance this experience for you, and I think it's more helpful to watch these, and hopefully you think it's helpful too, so that you actually are a little interested in this topic and having a little fun with it instead of just taking an assessment and that it's not as fun, So anyway, we're done with biotic interactions for right now, and workday Monday, and we'll start with abiotic interactions next week. Have a good weekend.